Hey everybody, welcome to Kensington, Birmingham. My name is Justin Warrens, and I'm so grateful that you have joined us today. Whether it's your first time or you've been with us for a while, we look forward to getting to know your story, hearing more about how you've gotten connected here, and helping you take a next step. So as you grab that second cup of coffee, whether you're at home or on vacation, why don't you sit back and enjoy as we get started today.
God. Come on, sing that again. Oh, hallelujah, God, above it all. Hallelujah, God, unshakable. Hallelujah, you have done great things. You've done great things. Come on, sing together. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquered the grave and free every captive. You break every chain, oh God. You have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awake and alive. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high, oh God. You have done great things. You have done great things. Oh God, you do great things. Oh, you're faithful.
Welcome to Kensington Church. I'm really glad that you're here for today's service. I'm Sam Frangione, our arts director at the Orient campus, and although you'll never find me sipping a pumpkin spice latte and Uggs, I'm more of a salted caramel cream cold brew kind of guy. There are lots of things I do love about fall. I'm a fan of pumpkin patches, cider mills, Friday night lights, and the relaunching of many things happening around Kensington. I have 2 exciting fall happenings coming at you. Consider this your personal invitation. First is Man Camp. I've attended Kensington's Men Retreat for 3 years now, and trust me, this is something that you want to prioritize. Man Camp is for every man in every walk of life. That means you. You are invited, and you should come for so many reasons. Ziplining, sports, fishing, kayaking, eating, great music, breakout sessions, and more. We're calling it Man Camp because we've been thinking about how a base camp is a place of preparation for a great trek or exploration ahead. It's a place to be inspired, challenged, and reminded that the journey we're on isn't one that we're on alone, but that God is with us and that we have a brotherhood of men walking alongside us too. In years past, we've seen that a single weekend is long enough for monumental decisions to be made, friendships to be built, and legacies to be transformed. So don't miss it. Join us at Spring Hill Camps October 8th to the 10th. Info and registration at kensingtonchurch.org/mancamp. Hope to see you there. The second invitation is for parents, particularly parents of little ones. We have 2 kids at home, and when you get the chance to take in some helpful content, you take it, especially when it's free. We have a free online faith and the family event happening tonight called Raising Littles. You've probably heard the saying that the years are short and that the days are long with young children. I can definitely vouch that the days are long, but perspective is important. These long days often can leave us exhausted and wondering how we could possibly create meaningful moments to teach them about Jesus. Please join us tonight for a time of encouragement as we align ourselves with God and make room for Him to speak into these chaotic days. This event is hosted by our very own Taylor Leal, our early childhood director at the Troy campus, with guest panelists who will share practical ways to bring Jesus into our parenting and to intentionally train little hearts. Register now at kensingtonchurch.org/faith and family. Let's return now to our service. I believe God has something in store for each one of us. We're in the 3rd week of our I Feel series and focusing on feeling conflicted. That's a feeling that I can definitely identify with. That internal wrestling and sometimes even indecision. Let's lean in and see what God has for us today. Thanks for being here.
Well, hey, good morning. How is everyone doing? Good? I want to welcome you, those of you who are here live in person and those on the stream. We're so excited that you have joined us today. My name is Justin, and I have the honor of being a part of this team here at Kensington and this campus. And I want to share a few things about what is going on in our community, some opportunities for you to get connected and maybe take a next step, especially for those of you who are newer. One of the things I would encourage after the service is to stop by what we call our hub. It's a space for connecting with some of our team. A lot of those team members are wearing orange, and it's a great place to also find out what are the ways you can find next steps around Kensington. And so I'd encourage you to do that. Now, one of the things that was mentioned in the video that I'm really passionate about, probably because I've been a part of the team for a number of years leading it, is Man Camp. It's our Kensington Men's Retreat. Now, I don't know if you know this, but men sign up for things late. Did you know that? I will tell you, in our 10 years of running this camp, about 3/4 of the men sign up in the last 7 to 10 days. So we always get this question, like, how much food do you need? I don't know. I'm just going to take a guess, and I'm going to hope that they all sign up. So one of my things I would just encourage you to do, this is one of the most incredible experiences to connect with people, to connect with other men, and also it is an incredible opportunity to grow. And we're talking about this year the idea of brotherhood and the importance of brotherhood, especially in this last season that we've been through. There could not be a better topic for us to engage with one another, learn from each other, and grow. We have some incredible speakers and bands lined up, and so it will be a weekend to remember. The second thing I want to let you know about, especially if you have noticed in this season as people are coming back and re-engaging in families and you kind of have your calendars all planned, one of the things we have been inviting you to do is to consider serving one time a month on our volunteer teams. And the reason why is we know that life is happening, the chaos is happening. I know for me, with our 4 kids, I am a taxi driver on Mondays and Thursday nights. This week even, my wife Jenny and I, we pulled up to the same light going in separate directions for different kids to cross over again at the same time. I mean, I know it's chaotic, but one of the beautiful things that you get to be a part of in this community is helping create a space for people to engage. And so I invite you to consider that. We are actually hosting a lunch next week to kind of give you some vision and share a little bit about the different opportunities. If you're interested, I'd encourage you to sign up for that as well. Now, one of the things that I just kind of want to give you an update on is we have been talking about the partnership we have in Afghanistan. And we've been a little bit cautious with some of the words that we share, some of the information because of how under wraps it is. But I want to let you know that this community, in its generosity, has helped families in the thousands be able to flee to safety in partnering countries. And I am so grateful for you and all that. Yeah, you can definitely clap for that. It's absolutely incredible. But in that same moment, people have asked, what is Kensington doing in this community, in this region, as we're navigating this situation locally with local refugees that are starting to arrive in Michigan? And one of the things that we do here at Kensington, if you didn't know, is we have something called Move Out teams. And these are teams that have a passion and a connection to the local community, saying, here's an area where I want to serve, where I want to engage the world. And so one of the things that we have been partnering with and building a partnership with is a community called Samaritas. They're a local community here that have been working with refugee resettlement and helping families get back into a place of self-sustaining as they move into a new location, especially as they've lost so many things, leaving so quickly in this situation especially. And so we have that opportunity that if you are interested, we are actually beginning this partnership with Samaritas, and we're inviting you to join us in that. There is going to be an online volunteer opportunity info meeting that you can go to kensingtonchurch.org/moveout if you're interested. And one of the ways that we are partnering cross-culturally in this conversation is actually we're encouraging families to walk with a family for 3 to 6 months. And it's kind of a really cool opportunity, whether it's family or a small group, to be a part of creating spaces for people as they're navigating this resettlement reality. And one of the cool stats about Samaritas that we're so grateful for is within 6 months, 75% of the refugees they have worked with end up in a self-sustaining situation. And so we are incredibly grateful for their wisdom and partnership. The amazing God moments have just aligned in cool ways. So that's one way that you can get involved with us. If you have questions, feel free to talk with us afterwards. We'd love to chat about that. Now, we're in this series called I Feel. So first week, we talked about feeling unseen or alone. I don't know if anyone has felt that lately. I can assume all of us at some point or another. And then we talked about feeling anxious or worried. And we talked about the tension of that. Well, this week, we're talking about the idea of feeling conflicted. I don't know if you have had that feeling at some point. that you have felt conflicted, you have felt isolated, you have felt frustrated, you have felt a tension rising within you. And so our team, as we were dreaming up about how do we want to step into today, this song we listened to was just a powerful, almost prayer that was being spoken over us as we began to plan this day. And we wanted to invite you to experience it as well. Maybe in the middle of all of the tensions and questions that you have had, the worries, the frustrations, you've wondered, has somebody cared for you? Does somebody care for you in the middle of conflict? How are you going to get through that conflict? And so my hope is this moment would encourage you deep in your soul in a way that points you to a more hopeful future.
If my heart could tell a story, if my life could sing a song, if I have a testimony, if I have anything at all, no one ever cared for me like Jesus. His faithful hand has held me all this way. And when I'm old and gray and all my days are numbered on the earth, let it be known in you alone my joy was found. I found my joy. Let my children tell this story. That all my treasure was in heaven. The earth. And when I'm old and gray and all my days are numbered on the earth, let it be known in you alone my joy was found. I found my joy. I'm still in love. You're still enough for me. Still all I want. You're still my everything. I'm still in love. You're still enough for me. Still all I want. You're still my everything. faithful hand has held me all this way. And when I'm old and gray and all my days are numbered on the earth, let it be known in you alone my joy was found.
You know, as I listen to those words, if I'm honest, I need them. I don't always believe them, but I want to. And I have these moments, I don't know if this happens for you, I have these moments where I've watched God carry me through painful moments in my life, moments that I felt so desperate and longing for his presence. And then I have moments where I long for him to show up a little bit earlier and show me the way that he wanted me to walk. And yet there's something that, whether you have been following Jesus for a long time or just considering what his love is like, there's something that is so powerful in the middle of the chaos where you feel his presence overwhelm you. His love be there with you even though you don't feel like you deserve it, but you know you need it. And that is one of the most beautiful things that I think we have in the story of God, is he meets us in our mess, and he offers us hope, and he offers us his presence, and he offers us a path forward in the middle of our conflict. So would you pray with me as we step into this idea of being conflicted? Heavenly Father, we come before you, grateful that you step into it with us, into our lives, into our mess, into those moments that are painful and difficult. We thank you that we don't come before you because of our righteousness, but we come before you because of your mercy and your love and your grace. Let us not get caught in things that do not follow you or from you. Let us not get caught in those lies, Lord, but let us just cling to your presence and let you speak to us today. In Jesus' name, amen. You can give it up for the band and Hannah once again. It was absolutely beautiful. I'm like trying to hold it together over here as I'm standing up here. It's just beauty on display. And, you know, in this series we've been talking about feeling anxious. We've been talking about feeling unseen. Today we're talking about feeling conflicted. Now, I don't know if you had this paradigm in your world growing up, but when I thought about difficult choices in my life, I thought about the good versus the bad choice. Like I thought every choice I was going to be faced with is, do I go this way or that way? And it was going to be absolutely clear. I have found the most difficult choices in life are the good and the good. Right? It's like, do I do this option or I do that? Like, do I get Bucharest Grill or Mr. Kebab? It's a very important choice in my family. But, you know, one of the things that I was thinking about, a moment of conflict that I had was actually about 13 years ago now. Actually about 14 years ago. My wife and I, we got married about 14 years ago. That wasn't the moment of conflict. But quickly after, we got an invitation to step out of our jobs. So I was in purchasing and supply chain management. My wife was a teacher. It was a good time. We were having a blast working and hosting a Bible study, and we were part of our work life and friend life, and we spent more money on food than I care to admit. It was like one of those things. Every night was date night back then because we were living that dink life. Double income, no kids, you know? It's a good time. And in that moment, though, we got an invitation from a friend of ours, my mentor, Brian. And he was on staff at Michigan State, and he invited me to be a part of a Christian organization to step on staff there. And I was like, oh, wouldn't that be just a great 2-year journey of just trying something out in this season of life, and then we'll get back to our life as normal. And then about a month later, I'm talking with Steve Andrews, and we have a conversation, and then I get a call the next day, say, hey, if you're considering going on staff at Michigan State with Campus Crusade, would you come on staff here at Kensington? And now I have good and good. I have 2 mentors, incredible heroes in my life, asking us to consider changing and disrupting our entire life and experiencing a different direction. The most conflicted moment I had that year was calling my mentor, Brian, after 4 months of prayer, after 4 months of conversation, after 4 months of seeking wisdom and saying, you know, Brian, I love you. I thought it was a dream to be on staff with you and your family. His wife, Robin, has been a mentor of Jenny. But I just felt something deep within me that said, I'm called to be a part of Kensington, Birmingham. About 14 years ago, that was made clear. And in that moment, that was one of the most painful moments and one of the hardest decisions. And I was conflicted. I did not want to make that phone call. But there are other moments that I've also found myself conflicted. I found myself conflicted back in high school, making a decision whether or not I was going to cheat on a test. I made that decision and got caught in that process. Sorry, Mom. But I talked the teacher out. That's a different story. I felt conflicted in whether or not I would ask a girl out on a date that I liked and whether or not I was being willing to put myself in rejection. I felt conflicted when I stepped into my office in the workplace. And especially for those of you in this community, you know this. I felt conflicted when I watched coworkers of mine ask for special treatment from customers and special gifts that they weren't supposed to be asking for. And I'm a 22-year-old on staff watching people who are my bosses get special treatment. I felt conflicted when I came into a conversation with my boss. I went down to his cubicle and he was telling me about this trip I was going to go on to Japan. I worked on a global team and we're going to meet all in Japan for this one meeting. He said, hey, this is what your schedule is going to look like. You're going to work from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then at 8 p.m. you're going to go out to eat really good food, enjoy that. And then you're going to go to the bowling and the karaoke bar. And then you're going to go to the other bar. And I was like, the other bar? He goes, the other bar where you watch stuff. I was like, well, I'm not going to watch stuff. I'm not going to go to that bar. He goes, well, you kind of have to because you're going for a business trip. I felt conflicted of how do I navigate that moment? Am I willing to lose my job over this conflict that I feel? And I know in this room, all of us have been faced with it. I remembered walking to his cubicle the next day and saying, if it means that I don't get to go on this trip or I need to look for something else, I'm willing to let go of that because of what I desire in my future and my family. You and I have been navigating conflict our entire life. There are moments of tension. There's moments where we have felt this weight tearing us apart and going, what will I do in my life in this one moment? By the way, how many moments that are life-altering that we face? It is absolutely incredible. As you get older and you find yourself navigating those in your office, in your family, in your home, these moments that can almost change the trajectory, not just of a day or an evening, but years. They can destroy families. They can help families flourish. And you think about, these are the moments of conflict that we find ourselves in. And yet, why do we find ourselves back in the scriptures looking at the story in this series of David? Because David had these moments. And the beautiful part about David in these moments is he reveals to us in the Psalms some of his prayers of desperation in the middle of conflict moments. And it's almost like David invites us to go, here's my desperation that I was navigating. Here's my struggle. Here's what I really feel. And so that's what we're going to look at today. A moment of conflict in David's life where he began to lead differently. He began to, with the pressure around him, to make a very crucial decision that formed his character. Before we jump in to this 1 Samuel chapter 22, I'm going to take a moment and receive our offering. And I just want to say this. To those of you part of Kensington who have been so faithful in your generosity, I want to say thank you because you are a part of so many stories that I feel like I have the honor of knowing, but I don't get to share all the time. You have the opportunity of stories, just like we're talking about with the Afghan refugee relocation process. That is because we have this move out team that is able to go find and discover opportunities for us to go serve. You have part of opportunities in Kensington Kids, where we were just talking about, even just in the last couple of weeks, the kids' joy about being back together. I mean, we had our Kensington Kids kindergartners, the 5-year-olds, move into kindergarten, and it was absolute joy and chaos. As you imagine, everything with a kindergarten is absolute joy and chaos, and you are a part of creating joyful moments all around this community. So when you give, you're a part of that. And I'm just so thankful that we get to be partners together. There are a couple ways, as you can see on the screen, to give. You can give via text. You can give on our website. Our app is great. And then also as you walk out, there are boxes that you can drop off an offering into as well. We're going to look at 1 Samuel chapter 22. And this is David. If you recall, last week we were talking about David begins to go on the run, because Saul is after his life, and you can sense the worry and anxiety that is filling inside of him. Now we get to dive deeper into this story. David left Gath and escaped to the cave of Adullam. When his brothers and his father's household heard about it, they went down to him there. All those who were in distress or in debt or discontented gathered around him. Talk about a great group of friends. Think about if people were describing the people that were around you gathering, that you were in relationship. It's all the distress and debt and discontented. And he became their commander. And there was about 400 men who were with him. 400 men decide to follow David as he is on the run. Now, David knows that God has made a promise in his life that he would become king, but he doesn't know the process. And when I think about that moment in our lives, isn't that the worst moment to find yourself in, where you feel the most conflict? You're like, I know that there's something great out there for me to step into, and yet I don't know the way to it. And it's one of the most difficult moments to be faced with. It's one of those that we find conflict rising up within us. But have you ever been in that moment, that tension, where you know the promise or believe the promise that God has given you, and yet you do not know the process? You look for a shortcut. Have you ever found yourself going, I wonder if I just talk bad about this person, if I'll get the promotion that I believe I deserve? I wonder if I just make this comment about so-and-so, then I'll get all the things I desire. How often do we find ourselves daily faced with moments of, will I cut a corner so that I can get what I want? And yet, this is a moment where David comes face to face with it. And my question to you to think about is, what is your posture in those moments of conflict? Do you find yourself running to people that are willing to point you towards a more kingdom perspective? Or do you find yourself looking for the shortcut to get you what you want, when you want it, how you want it? Do you find yourself patient? Or do you find yourself frustrated and bitter out of a lack of control? Are you willing to trust in the middle of the conflicted moments? So we're going to look at this moment where David goes from being in the castle, because if you recall, we talked about last week, Saul had brought David into his palace essentially to have him work with the kingdom and be a part of it, and he would perform, and he was a close person. So he had all the privileges of the castle, and yet in this moment, he ends up in a cave. He goes from the castle to the cave with the discontented, in debt, and distressed. Not quite the motion picture that you long for in your life. So he ends up in this place called the En-Gedi Oasis. Now, En-Gedi is one of my favorite places. I have a picture of it where we went a couple years ago. I have had the honor of taking a group of men over to En-Gedi. And so the first picture you're going to see is this picture of the actual cave. And it's the cave of Adullam, or partial cave of Adullam. And the cave, what is absolutely stunning about it is it's this beautiful oasis in the middle of the Judean desert. So it's right near the Dead Sea. And the cave that is right near the Dead Sea is flowing with water. So you can see it right here. Like this, some of the rock is fallen, but this would be this overhang of En-Gedi. So in the middle of the absolute desert, barren all around, there is an oasis of life. There is an oasis of this freshwater spring that provides life to animals and to humans. And this is the cave that we find David in. And let me show you this next picture that somebody else took. So theirs is more beautiful than mine. I think they made it look better. When I look at this picture, one of the things that this artist wrote is, this is life. In the desperate moments, in the desert moments, in the cave moments, does God speak life into us and offer us a new hope, offer us something life-giving that we need and long for survival? 1 Samuel, chapter 24. Verse 1, after Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told that David is in the desert of En-Gedi. So Saul took 3,000 able young men from all Israel and set out to look for David and his men near the crags of wild goats. He came to sheep pens along the way. A cave was there, and Saul went in to relieve himself. It was not a short relieving of himself. It was more of a 30-minute type of relieving himself, if you understand what that is saying. David and his men were far back in the cave. See, that cave overhang, the caves that exist in that area, were so loud. Actually, when we were there, the water wasn't flowing as much because so much of use now for farming and different crops. But one of the things that in that cave, it is so loud when you're close to it. We had to actually step out of it to have a conversation because of the loud sounds of the water and everything happening. So you imagine David and his men are deep within this cave, and Saul goes in to take care of business, his royal business. And as he's doing that, one of the things that would happen in that culture, none of his guards would go with him. It would be a moment where he would be left to himself, which is probably a good thing. And so Saul, in this moment, and David have their roles reversed. Saul has been seeking out David to find him in a vulnerable situation. And now David finds Saul in a very vulnerable situation. Imagine if you're replaying, I don't know if this happens to you, but I can have this moment where I replay the day and replay my life a little bit and go, what if it goes this way? Or you start picturing the future of like, if I just do this, somebody else will do that. I used to do that all the time in purchasing. When I'd get into a negotiation, I would think like, before I made that phone call, I'm going to offer them this, then they're going to counter with this, and then I'm going to do this, then they're going to say this, and then I'm going to get them like this. Right? Like this is what we do in our minds if we're honest, that we talk to ourselves pretty often. But in this moment, you can imagine David sees Saul in the cave, and now he has the 400 guys who are in debt, in distress, in discontent going, this is the moment. David, this is your moment to take matters into your own hands. Imagine the peer pressure in that moment. See, I think we feel that in our conflicted moments. We feel pressure. Why are we conflicted sometimes? Because you look at your kids, you go, I want to provide for them. I want to do good by them. I want to give them the desires of their heart. So sometimes I might be willing to cut a corner, maybe. I look at my spouse. I want to do right by them. But I also feel this tension about what I want. Like we have this pressure in our lives all the time. And there's something about David's story that I want to give us as a truth to consider as we read the rest of it. Cave moments can cultivate character. The moments in the cave, the moments when you feel conflicted, those difficult moments can cultivate the character of your heart unlike any other moment. I look back on my life, and I've noticed that in the cave moments of my life, God has molded my heart about the things that matter. He's molded my heart about the things I was prideful about. He's molded my heart about the things I didn't want to let go of. Because I believe in those cave moments, God can cultivate the very character of our soul. And we can exit out of the cave different than the way we came in. In the castle, when things are going well and easy, sometimes I get lazy. Sometimes I start kind of just skating by. I kind of forget my desperation. And in the castle moments, I can coast. But in the cave, I find myself facing a character-forming moment. And the question is, what choice will I make in that moment? Will I choose to cut the corner, or I choose to let God cultivate the character of my soul? David is faced with this character-cultivating moment. When I think about my life, some of the character-cultivating moments, I had to wrestle with this idea, and I would even say take this past 18 months, 2 years that we've been in. For me, I can say one of the cave-cultivating moments is learning that I'm not as patient as I once thought. And that was really hard for me. I want to be a patient dad, but the problem is I had 4 children. So my patience has worn real thin, especially in quarantine. But you want to know what? What I realized that the cave does, the cave just reveals what's already there. I wasn't not patient before. I just wasn't pushed under as much pressure, and that impatience rose within me. Sometimes I find myself in the cave cultivating moments. I shared a little bit about this last week, but one of the reasons why I ended up in a panic attack years ago was because I was so reliant on myself more than other people. I was unwilling to ask for help. I was unwilling to seek out help, not only from God, but from others. And so in this self-reliance, this idea that I have what it takes and I can do it all by myself and I can carry the weight of the world, I realized in that cave that God was cultivating a different character within me, saying that is not the way forward. That's not what I long for you to experience. That's not my hope for you. There are moments where you have been put in temptation, moments of temptation where conflict has arisen. There are moments where you found yourself maybe at a workplace where it's only you and a person of the opposite sex, and you start having your mind run. And you are making a choice. Am I going to stay here and allow something to happen potentially? Or am I going to leave and go home and be with my family? These stories, these cave moments, we see the different choices that God can cultivate the character of our hearts. There are moments of when we file our taxes. Am I going to just cut a little corner for myself that nobody else will notice? And it'll just be for me. And it's for good things. The ends justify the means. I am doing it for good reasons. See, I think every one of these cave moments, and I'm sure there are some that are popping up in your head, they have been moments where God has used to cultivate the character of your heart, or he's used and said, hey, I want to go back there, and I want to offer you a different future. I want to offer you a different way forward. See, when hiding in the caves, this is what David pens in Psalm 57. Be merciful to me, O God. Be merciful to me. For in you, my soul takes refuge. In the shadow of your wings, I will take refuge till the storms of destruction pass by. I cry out to the God Most High, to the God who fulfills his purpose for me. Notice this. It's the God who fulfills his purpose. Not my purpose, not the thing that I want to cling to, his purpose for me. It's that God that I am seeking refuge in the shadow of your wings. What a beautiful image that we are invited to embrace. In the moment of desperate situations, that we have a God who's even the shadow of his wings is one of the ways he is merciful to us. I was reading this morning in my quiet time, and one of the things that it said out of Daniel 9, it said, we do not come before God because of our righteousness. We come before him because of his mercy. See, too often, we think we have to have it all together to be in the shadow of God's wings, and yet he invites us over and over in those moments, in those cave moments, to gather under the shadow of his wings and to trust that his purpose is far better than our own. And that's one of the truths that David lives out, that God's purposes can be trusted. His purpose for us, his invitation to us to experience a more hopeful future, his purpose that maybe, whether it's a job situation, a family situation, a difficult cave moment, he is going to use it in a way to reframe our hearts, to reshape our character, and offer us a different direction. Have you ever found yourself, though, wrestling with when God's purpose isn't your purpose, and that conflict? Well, here's what David does in this moment as he's clinging to God's presence in the middle of seeing God's purpose. 1 Samuel 24, verse 4. Then the men said, "This is the day the Lord spoke when he said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish." So those distressed, in debt men are like, now's the time. Now's the time. Take up this purpose. This is our purpose. This is our moment, David. This is the way that in this defenseless moment of Saul, you can take what you want. Now, part of the story, though, of why Saul isn't considered the king for the future and why David was anointed king is because Saul wasn't considered a man after God's own heart. Think about this moment where David is in a cave moment where the cultivating of his character is about to happen, where in that moment he can decide to assassinate Saul. But would he be the man after God's own heart that God was seeking? Or would he be taking those purposes into his own way? So then David crept up unnoticed, and he cut off a corner of Saul's robe. He doesn't do what those men ask him to do. Afterward, David was conscience-stricken for having cut off a corner of his robe. He said to his men, "The Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, or lay a hand on him, for he is the anointed of God." With these words, David sharply rebuked his men and did not allow them to attack Saul. And Saul left the cave and went on his way. So Saul leaves and doesn't even know what happened, didn't even know the conflict that existed, didn't even know that the person he was searching for just had the possibility of ending it for him. And David knows something. He says, the purpose that I want for my life, the purpose that I believe God has invited me to, and the promises that he has invited me to experience, they are not for me to take under my own control. They're not for me to cut around the corners of life and be able to take what I want, the way I want, when I want, without waiting for what God desires and how he will reveal his promises. So God's purpose can be trusted. God's promises can be trusted as well. The promise to David was that he would become king. The way in which it would happen would be on God's timing and God's direction. As I think about this, of how often we come face to face with these moments, there's something so interesting about our culture. We can praise people's skills and talent and their competency. And there's a number of different ways this has been said, but this is the way that I felt like for my heart, this is one that I've clung to. Competency may get you a position, but your character will allow you to stay. Your talent may get you a date. Your skills of asking somebody out. But it is your character that allows that relationship to flourish. Your job, you may have the best resume, but it is your character that allows people to say, this is a person worth following. In every area of life, our competency can get us in the room, but it is our character that allows us to stay. And what if God is using these cave cultivating moments to cultivate our character so that not only do we get to stay in the relationships that we long for, the family that we have, the dynamics that we have in our community, but what if it is meant for us to flourish and to offer other people the opportunity to flourish too? Because of David's actions, his character, those 4,000 men get to have a very different story as well as David. Let's look what happens next in David's life, in those 4,000 men's life, and in Saul's life. Then David went out of the cave and called out to Saul, "My lord the king." When Saul looked behind him, David bowed down, prostrated himself with his face to the ground. Because that's what you do when you see the king. Like, he is coming before the king of his community and continuing to let his character be of the highest level. And he said to Saul, "Why do you listen to the men that say, 'David is bent on harming you'? This day you have seen with your own eyes how the Lord delivered you into my hands in the cave. Some urged me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, I will not lay a hand on my Lord, because he is the Lord's anointed. See, my father, look at the piece of your robe in my hand. I cut off the corner of your robe, but did not kill you. See that there is nothing in my hand to indicate that I am guilty of wrongdoing or rebellion. I have not wronged you, but you are hunting me down to take my life." And he goes on to share a few more things, but then this is what Saul's response is because of the character of David. When David finished saying this, Saul asked, "Is that your voice, David, my son?" And he wept aloud. "You are more righteous than I," he said. "You have treated me well, but I have treated you badly. You have just now told me about the good you did to me. The Lord delivered me into your hands, but you did not kill me. May the Lord reward you well for the way you treated me today. I know that you will surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel will be established in your hands." Think about this cave cultivating moment, this character cultivating moment that David leads. He invites every person in that space to see God in a different way, to see character in a different way. As you think about it, as you lean into the story more, and as I summarize some of it, is those 400 men and those 3,000 men had a very different destiny as a result of this day. What ended up happening is David would actually become the king in the future. And he would be called a man after God's own heart because he had the character, more often than not, to follow God's direction and prompting. He was willing to trust God's purposes, even when it was in a cave and desperate moment. He was willing to trust God's promises, even though he didn't know the process. He was willing to trust God's timing, even though it wasn't in his time. And as a result of that, David gets to lead out the entire kingdom of Israel. See, David's pursuit of character in the middle of an unfair situation, in the middle of anxiety, desperation, and a lack of hope, changes the destiny of the entire community. His competency allowed him to be in the position, but it is his character that allowed him to stay. And what is God speaking to you about your character and my character? See, David had this cave cultivating character perspective. What if we had the same in those moments of desperation, in those moments where God's purpose doesn't seem to be clear, God's promise seems delayed, God's timing seems off? How will we respond in those moments? Like when I think about those three, I think about, what do I struggle with most right now? Am I struggling with God's purpose? Am I struggling with God's timing? Am I struggling with his promise? Where do I find myself wrestling the most? Because you might be in a cave right now. Could be at work, could be your job situation, could be neighbors, could be your family, and you feel desperate and searching and looking. For me, as I was thinking about this story of David, it connected something so beautiful for me about Jesus. See, one of the things that happens is we talked about David goes, I called him Dave like he's a buddy of mine. David goes from the castle to the cave. You know what Jesus did? Jesus went from the castle of heaven to the grave and the cave so that we could have hope. Jesus was willing to take the journey from the castle to the cave. In Hebrews 12, it gives us a picture of why. It says the very reason that we fix our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, is this: for the joy that was set before him, he, Jesus, endured the cross, scorned its shame, sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him, consider Jesus, who endured such opposition from sinners so that you will not grow weary or lose heart. When we consider whether or not we follow Jesus or whether we've been holding him at a distance, that he was willing to go from the castle to the grave for us, he says that we are his joy. He did it so that we would have hope, so that we would have life, so that we, in the moments of the cave moments of desperation, that we know that we have a God who's willing to give up everything so that we could experience his grace and his mercy. Because sometimes we don't offer that to ourselves. We have that kind of God whose promises can be trusted, whose purpose can be trusted, whose timing can be trusted, and he offers us a way forward. So David, in Psalm 63, writes these words, and I've needed these this week as I've been leaning into this message, leaning into the scripture. It says, "You, God, are my God. Earnestly I seek you. I thirst for you. My whole being longs for you. In a dry and parched land where there is no water, I have seen you in the sanctuary and beheld your power and your glory, because your love is better than life. My lips will glorify you. I will praise you as long as I live, and in your name I will lift my hands up. I will be fully satisfied as with the richest of foods. With the singing lips my mouth will praise you. On my bed I will remember you. I will think of you through the watches of the night, because you are my help. I will sing in the shadows of your wings. I cling to you. Your right hand upholds me. In the middle of conflict, where our character is being cultivated in the soils of this life, in the moments where God is moving in us and offering us hope, God is inviting us to search the depths of our heart. And in the moments of the desert, we can cling to a God who offers us life, love that is better than life. It's not based on our competency. It is because he was willing to go from the castle to the cave for you and for me. He was willing for the joy that was set before him to offer us hope. So the other night, I had a moment that was really difficult where this was very real for me. I came home from hanging out with some friends, and I realized this moment as I walked in the door, and I know all of us have had it. If you've been married, you have kids, there are these moments that you walk in the door and you know something isn't quite right. I walked in and I look at my wife's eyes, and I realize I've hurt her and I don't know why. And we started talking, and I realized I misinterpreted an entire conversation. Man, I felt like God. As we had this conversation, she went upstairs to go get ready for bed. I found myself just sitting in this chair in my living room, going, God, what are you doing in my heart right now? I feel so sad that I hurt my wife by misinterpreting something, that she felt the brunt of my selfishness, the brunt of my lack of awareness. For me, I love these conversations about character because it's painful, but it's always happening. God is always forming us. So one thing I've realized is I've never arrived. I don't know if you know this, I'm not perfect. Neither are you. It's this journey that we are invited on. But you know what? When I read these scriptures, and when I lean into David, being able to say that your love is better than life, and I will praise you as long as I live in the shadows of your wings, you are my help, I'm reminded that caves are universal. And even when I get tricked into thinking I won't be in one, I find myself in them. And the question isn't always, how did I get here? I know how I got there. The question is, God, what are you going to do with my heart? What are you going to do in us so that we can move forward in a more beautiful way, so that we can grow, so we can cultivate not only the character of our own heart, but we can model it for our children and our family so that we can fall more in love with each other in the process. I believe that's what God does as he cultivates the character of our heart. He offers us a future, the future that we are longing for, by the way, the future that we have so desperately sought out. So maybe today the question is, God, will you search our hearts and reveal to us what are the purposes that I haven't agreed with you on? What are the promises that I've been struggling with? What is the timing that I've grown discontent with? And God, what do you want to cultivate in the character of my heart? Would you search that within me and offer me a more beautiful picture as you remind us of your mercy and your grace?
Spirit, come. contrite heart, and these you will not despise. And only you can know me, and so I bow before you now and plead you to search me, oh God, and know my heart. Try me and see my every anxious thought. Remove from me any evil thing, and lead me in the way everlasting. You desire truth in the deepest parts, and not an offering or sacrifice. A broken spirit, a contrite heart, and these you will not despise. And only you can know me, and so I bow before you now and plead you to search me, oh God, and know my heart. Try me and see my every anxious thought. Remove from me any evil thing, lead me in the way everlasting. Your ways are higher than mine. Your thoughts are perfect and true. Your ways are higher than mine. Your thoughts are perfect and true. Only you can know me, and so I bow before you now and plead you to search me, oh God, and know my heart. Try me and see my every anxious thought. Remove from me any evil thing, and lead me in the way everlasting. Oh, lead me in the way everlasting. As we close today, let's stand and sing, remembering that God is faithful. He'll meet us right where we are. God of Abraham, the God of covenant, faithful to the end. Time and time again, you have proven you do just what you say. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast and let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness this together. God, from age to age, though the earth may pass away, your word remains the same. Your history can prove there's nothing you can't do. You're faithful and true. Though the storm may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast and let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Oh, great is your faithfulness to me. Oh, you are faithful. Come on, church, from your heart to his. And I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. You'll never let me down. I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. You'll never let me down. I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. Come on. I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. Oh, great is your faithfulness to me. Oh, great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Oh, great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Sing that again. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Oh, great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me.
As we sing those words, my hope is that if you have found yourself in a cave, if you have found yourself in desperate moments, that you would know that the faithfulness, the one who says you are his joy that is set before him, offers you hope, offers you his mercy, offers to meet with you in those moments and point you towards a new future. May that God be speaking to your heart today. May we go forth and let him form our character and remind us of his truths, that his promises can be trusted, his purpose can be trusted, his timing can be trusted, and may we follow him wherever he leads us. Amen? Amen. All right. So next week we have our series, the last week, called I Feel Hopeful. because I feel so hopeful about the future. And one of the other reasons why I'm hopeful about next week is we have our good friend Ruben from South Sudan who's going to be here with us in the morning. He's going to jump on the stage with Jenny and I and share a little bit about what he is hopeful for in the future. It's going to be incredible. One of the things that I would encourage you, out in the lobby, stop by, get connected if you haven't, or connect with somebody at our hub. We'd love for you to take a next step and love to pray with you if you need that today. God bless you and have a great day.